Hello and welcome to a special edition of the Music Rabbit Hole. This is my September music roundup. I've got 12 albums that I listened to this past month, and I'm going to give you my thoughts on them, give you my rankings and ratings and things like that, and hopefully basically kind of tell you which albums maybe you should spend some time listening to or not. We all obviously have such busy schedules. Sometimes it's hard to get to new music, and so my job here just tell you which albums you can probably leave off the list and which ones maybe you might want to check out. Let's go through them now. We will start from my least favorite album of the month, Kacey Musgraves-star-crossed. Came out September 10th. It's a 15-track album in the country pop type realm. Kacey Musgraves does have some tremendous music out there. Has had a couple really solid albums before. This one, though, just felt a little flat to me. The lyrics were almost laughable at times, like pretty bad. A lot of the songs were very bland, didn't have a lot of depth to it. And there's really only one track I enjoyed off this one. It was called Breadwinner. Critics gave it a 7.8. I gave this one a 5.6. That's my ranking on Kacey Musgraves. Number 2 on my list here, we're hitting up Bad Waitress and the song and the album No Taste. This one came out September 3rd. 10-track album. It's in the punk rock, art punk type realm. I believe these are a Canadian punk band. And, I like punk music at times. This one also kind of fell a little flat for me. There wasn't, if you like that type of music, you might really enjoy this album. I know critically this album has done well. 7.9 from the critics. I gave it a 6.2. The only track I enjoyed was the track Restless Body. But if you're into the art punk, punk rock type realm, then you may, in fact, enjoy that record. Next on the list, we're hitting up Spencer and the album Are You Down? That came out September 10th. It's 11 tracks. It's in the kind of R&B type realm, alternative at times. Definitely not, I wouldn't call this like a rap album. And for this one, Spencer's pretty young. I think he's only 20 years old. Long way to go in music and plenty of ceiling for him. And there's some really good moments on this album. My favorite track, Lonely As I Ever Was. Critics are really high on this one. They gave it an 8.4. I gave it a 6.6. I think there are some, like I mentioned, some strong moments on this record. And then there's some moments where you can kind of see, all right, this guy is still pretty young, is kind of finding his footing. This was his debut album, I believe. And I think there's some room to grow for Spencer. So I gave, like I mentioned, a 6.6. Got a few 6.8s here. First, we're hitting a Motorists and the album Surrounded that came out September 3rd. 12-track album in the indie rock, indie pop type realm. 2 good tracks off this one, Vainglorious and Through to You. I was pleasantly surprised. When I first listened to the first track or 2 tracks, I was kind of like, I don't know if I even can get through this album. And then I gave it some more time and I let it sink in a little bit. And I was like, you know what? This is actually pretty good. They're trying to go for a very specific sound. Sometimes the lead singer's voice got on my nerves, but it was listenable. And it was something that I did end up enjoying. Critics gave this an 8. I gave it a 6.8. I'd say anything in the 6s here, not really worth your time. Kind of like proceed if you dare. Anything in the 7s and above, I'd say definitely listen to, but this would not quite be in that realm. But like I said, pleasantly surprised. Maybe it'll surprise you as well. All right, next up, we're hitting up Drake and Certified Lover Boy, the September 3rd release. 21 tracks, a behemoth of an album, obviously in the rap and hip hop realm. So this album hit me in a similar way that Kanye's album hit me. And I know that's kind of cliche to say because the albums came out around the same time. Those guys are feuding. Everybody's kind of putting those 2 albums in the same conversation. But there's a reason why. Both albums were way too long. Both albums needed somebody to come in and tell these guys, hey, this song, not that great. It doesn't need to be on the album. And I think both of these guys are just so big that they don't really have anybody to do that for them. Who's going to tell them no, or who's going to tell them, hey, this song sucks. They're just too big for that. And I think Drake fell into that trap as well, where there's a lot of songs in here that are very formulaic Drake tracks that don't really break any new ground or anything like that. So if you like stereotypical Drake songs for 20 songs or more, then maybe you liked this one. But I think for the most part, people aren't super high on this. I know the critics gave it a 6.1. I gave it a 6.8. I think it's a little better than what some people are saying, but it's still not in the sevens and not that great. My favorite track, Champagne Poetry, 7 a.m. on Bridal Path, You Only Live Twice, The Remorse. Those were some of my favorite ones on the album. But yeah, it's overall it was definitely a little weak. All right, and then we got the Lathums, How Beautiful Life Can Be. Came out September 24th. This is a British band here in the indie rock realm, 12 tracks. And this one is actually, I think, charting like number 1 in the UK or something like that. It's doing really, really well. I liked it. It's this band is in that Arctic Monkeys realm, the Strokes realm, kind of that upbeat indie pop, British pop. The singer has the accent. If you like the British boys, you might enjoy this band. And I did at times. There's a couple really good songs in there. My favorite, I'll Get By and Fight On. But it was a type of album that loses you at a certain point. It's boring at certain points. It doesn't really hold your attention, and it felt very disjointed. And I think part of it might have been because they re-released some songs that they put out before, and they put it on this album, and it just didn't feel like a complete piece of work. It felt kind of disjointed at times. I gave it a 6.8. Critics gave it a 7.2, but I think that number is rising. I think people are liking this album more and more. Again, just not one of my favorites. Let's head into the sevens now. We've got Jordan Rakei, the album What We Call Life, that dropped September 17th, 10-track R&B album. This one plays really quickly, but really well. I really enjoyed it. I think I didn't know anything about this artist before. He's a crooner. He's an R&B guy. If you like, Bryson Tillers and whoever kind of in that realm, I think you can enjoy Jordan Rakei. Critics gave this an 8.7, which I felt a little high. I give it a 7.3. It's worth your while. It's worth your time. My favorite track is called Family. This is an album that I'd say, yeah, give a chance. Give a chance, and you might enjoy this one as well. But I'm not a whole lot more to say on that. All right. Now we got some 7.4s here. Lil Nas X-MONTERO, September 17th, 15 tracks. This is one of the biggest releases of the month, I would say. And I was pleasantly surprised by this album. You've heard the singles, of course, and you've heard the crazy stuff with the devil worship rumors and all these. I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff kind of surrounding Lil Nas X, and weird in good and bad ways. I mean, it's however you enjoy some of the stuff he talks about. But I would say he's a unique individual, and he does his own thing. And this album surprised me. There was more depth and introspection in this album than I necessarily thought there would be. You kind of looked at this as maybe a stereotypical radio type album, but it was pretty good, and I know the critics really like it. They gave it an 8.9. I gave it a 7.4. Definitely worth your while. One of Me and Sun Goes Down were my two favorite tracks on there, and obviously he's got some great features, of course. Next up, José González, who I actually did an episode of the Music Rabbit Hole on this past Monday, and the album Local Valley that came out September 17th. 13 tracks. He's in that singer-songwriter, folk rock, very soft rock music. Not even really rock, I'd say acoustic type of album there. And this is a good one to throw on a rainy day, or you're feeling moody or whatever. I'd say this is a type of album that really relaxes you. Critics gave it a 7.8. I gave it a 7.4. El Invento and Head On were my favorite tracks off of this one. We only have a couple left here. Let's see who's left on the list. If I can find my mouse. There it is. So we've got, let's see, 7.7. Yeah, we got a couple 7.7s here. So Lil Simz, this was one of my favorite albums of the month. Sometimes I Might Be Introvert. Came out at the beginning of the month, September 3rd. 19 tracks in the UK rap, hip-hop realm. She's really talented. I mean, she's put out some really good songs. This was kind of her coming out party, though, I think, in a way. This one's tracking really well. charting really well in the UK, and I think this is the type of album I think can have that crossover power. I think this album can hit the States audience, and they can enjoy this as well. Really great flow, some tremendous production. My favorite track off this one was called "I Love You, I Hate You." It's a fantastic song, but the album as a whole is really, really good. So as I mentioned, that's a 7.7 on Little Simz. Critics gave this an 8.7. They loved it. We've got We Were Promised Jetpacks and the album Enjoy the View that dropped September 10th. This is a 10-track indie rock, post-punk revival. This is very like atmospheric, synth pop at times. There's the environment feel to it. I'm a big fan of the group Frightened Rabbit, and this is a band that sounds a lot like them and have a very similar vibe. And this is a good record. I was actually higher than the critics on this one, which doesn't happen a ton for me. They gave it a 7.2. I gave it a 7.7 and love the song Fat Chance off of there. This is another one that if you're in a certain mood or a certain emotion, I would say throw on this record, and I think it could really, really speak to you at the time. We have one left here. We are hitting up Baby Keem. This was my favorite album of September. The album is called The Melodic Blue. It dropped September 10th, 16 tracks. This was his debut album. This is Kendrick Lamar's cousin. You've heard him on other tracks. I think the breakout hit was Orange Soda. This album, this is actually another one where I was higher than the critics. I think it's a very weird album. This is how it was described to me by my buddy Josh Grant, and actually I fully agree. It's very weird at times. There's times where you're like, what is going on? It's the album that has the top of the morning. That's where I believe that song is in that album, or I wouldn't call that a song, but the guy saying that is in this album, I believe. I could be completely wrong. But this album grew on me a lot. I listened to it a few times. I found my favorite tracks. I've got 5 favorite tracks: Issues, Family Ties, Scars, 16, and then the opening track, Trademark USA, is really, really good. And this is another artist where I think this is kind of a breakout party for him. I think this is a really strong record, really great features. Kendrick, of course, is on there, being his cousin and all. But I think this is the type of artist that I think this album is really good, and he's getting the attention for it that he should. But my guess is he's got the album that comes after this one, I think could be huge. Like, this was a really solid record, but I could see him putting out another album next year or something like that. And he's already built up the audience here from this one that he could get pretty big. Baby Keem, The Melodic Blue. I think that's it from my September listens. And hope this was helpful for you guys. Hope you found some options to listen to. I'll put in the description links to these albums so you can go listen to them or not. And if you have any suggestions of September albums that I didn't mention on the show, I know I've missed some. I only did 12. Feel free to drop it in the comments below. And besides that, I'm looking forward to some October releases coming next month here. You can always check out the Instagram where I'll rate and review albums, _music rabbit hole, and then of course you can check out the regular YouTube show here on the channel that I do every Monday, where I dive deep and find some other artists for you to enjoy. But that's your September releases. This has been another episode of The Music Rabbit Hole. We will see you next time.